Kevin Keats been uncanceled 15 minutes away on KCMO. So listen, I will always give local media a hard time when it's deserved, and that is frankly more often than not. But I'll give them some props when they also earn those. And listen, there are a couple of really good reporters in Kansas City. Matt Fleener at KNBC is one of them. He's appeared on this show on multiple occasions when he's covering a big story. John Ketz at Fox 4 does an excellent job as a reporter as well. But there are many reporters who just don't know how to do the job. Not even that they're not good at it. They just don't know how to do it. They showed up, I don't even know where from, but like they're not cutting their teeth somewhere that they need to cut their teeth. So then they show up in Kansas City and they are way in over their heads. I mean, from a delivery perspective, from a news gathering perspective, it's not good. But there's a couple of good ones here in Kansas City, and Fleener's one of them. And he reached out to me on Friday afternoon after he saw my tweet response to his tweet. Now, to be clear, his tweet was just a news story. He's an actual old school news guy. He's not old, but he's an old school news guy. And his post was a picture of Sharice Davids, congresswoman here on the Kansas side, meeting with former federal workers, talking about losing their jobs. And I just shared the post on X, and I wrote, the Kansas City media industry has lost many good people this week. Do they get a meeting with Sharice Davids? Has she done consistent meetings with other industries hit by layoffs in recent years? How about businesses who had to close during COVID? Or is this all just political posturing? So Matt hits me up and he said, hey, I'm trying to get both sides on the story. I can't get a hold of anybody with the Kansas delegation right now on the Republican side. Can we swing by the studios and do something? I said, sure, no problem. So he came up to the studios Friday, probably 2 o'clock or so. And here was the package on Channel 9.
Also happening now in Kansas, Representative Sharice Davids is working to help laid off federal workers.
Well, she held a roundtable today. KNBC 9's Matt Fleener showing us the impact and the reaction to those losing their jobs.
There's been a lot of talk about cutting the federal workforce. We've seen some of that impact here at the IRS in Kansas City.
That's why a former IRS worker and other workers who are no longer with the federal government or in limbo met with Congresswoman Sharice Davids on Friday. A couple took the buyout offer. A couple more were let go in their probationary period. We spoke with one worker let go and a conservative radio host about those job cuts.
Yes, this happens in the private sector. Completely agree. But there's always been an unspoken understanding that you don't make as much money in the federal government as you do in the private sector, but the trade-off is stability. And now you have lost that stability.
We all want stability, but then the marketplace has to play a role in all this. And right now the marketplace is very clear. We can't afford any of it. You can't tax your way out of it. Just there are cuts that have to be made.
Every one of those workers on Friday said their job search continues. They try to figure out what's next. Now they no longer work for the federal government. In Kansas City, Matt Fleener, KNBC 9 News.
That was Matt Fleener, as you just heard. Appreciate him stopping by the studio on Friday, running that package over the weekend. And obviously, if you've been listening to this show, you know how I feel about it. But that, even what that federal worker said there in that package is just not true. And I've got the data to back it up. This is according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Government workers earn 23.2% more in wages and salaries than private sector workers. How about that? This notion of, oh, well, I'm just doing my duty as an American citizen. I'm just, cobbling things together here because I'm a good old-fashioned rah-rah American trying to help the country's cause, and I'm working for less because I want stability. And we expect stability in the public sector because we are working for nothing compared to you guys in the private sector. You know you're not. That's just factually not true. The Congressional Budget Office found that federal workers with a high school diploma or less received 40% more in total compensation than their private sector counterparts. How do you interpret that data point? If you don't have a college education, you can get a much better gig with the government than you could anywhere in the private sector, unless you go to like a trade school or something like that. But if all you have is your high school degree, you should find a government job, because there is a high likelihood that you will get much more in compensation than you ever would in the private sector. So none of that's true. Now, of course, I can't counterpoint this guy because I don't know what he said to Matt. And then, of course, Matt asks me questions and what they run. I mean, we sat here for about 5-6 minutes and, I got a 20-second soundbite. That's how it works in television. There's nothing wrong with that. I joked with Matt on the way out. I said, so we just sat for 5 minutes, Matt. How much of that gets on the air? Because he said to me, he's like, that whole thing's not going to make it. I'm like, yeah, I know, man. I get how it works with TV. And then I said under my breath, that's why radio's better. But no, I get it. They've got to keep those things tight. But it's like this narrative that these government employees, and I know that most government employees are just hardworking people like you and I, but the notion that you are going to get an immense amount of sympathy from the private sector, no matter how hard media tries, and I don't mean Matt, I just mean media across the board tries. At least he got the counterpoint out there, which I much appreciate. Trust me, most people in town ain't doing that. It's just not true. And the facts back it up. The data backs it up. And I got some angry emails about this over the weekend from some Channel 9 viewers. Doug wrote to me, Mr. Mundow, M-U-N-D-O-W. He threw a little W on the back of the name. I don't know what he was going for there, but he went on to say that DOJ should focus on the larger programs rather than the smaller ones that are being eliminated because they are red meat for the Red Hats base. That was his line. Red meat for the Red Hats base.
You see what I did there?
So I wonder how long he's been sitting on that one. Doug was very proud of himself. Hey, give yourself a round of applause there, Doug.
There you go.
Very proud of himself. And clearly a guy who's never run a local or small business, because guess what? Small cuts stack up to big cuts. And then Rebecca wrote to me over the weekend, another gem of an email here. Do you have any idea what all the federal workers do to keep you safe? Okay, Karen. All right.
How dare you?
Sorry, Rebecca. Sorry. But that's the kind of stuff that's out there. And I think they're most upset that people aren't falling for it hook, line, and sinker.